conversation is going round. People talking about the colors come to town. Fresh as a summer breeze, she'll take you by surprise.
Good morning and welcome to another fabulous episode of Freshwaves here on Whistle FM. Good morning, Jason. Welcome to the board.
Good morning, Bren. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Now, you're working the technical board today. Thanks for everything that you're doing.
My
Ivan
pleasure.
Harris has a little bit of a cold this morning, so we hope that he's feeling better really soon. I'd like to give a big shout out to Reeser's Market and Bakery at 5758 Main Street for supplying the muffins in the studio and all the great things that they do for the community. You know, a lot of the businesses in Stouffville just look like businesses on a street, and so many of them contribute to our community in a lot of really great ways. And I think that sounds like a subject for another show.
It sure does.
It does.
Yeah.
There you go. Today, we are very, very happy to have Claudiu Popa back in the studio with us. From time to time, he drops in when we need to talk about different things that are internet security kind of thing related. You're the CEO of Informatica Corp, and you do internet security, so you're kind of like a specialist in that field. The last time you were on, we were talking about those CRA scans that were affecting a lot of seniors in our community. And today we're going to talk a little bit about social media, because social media seems to be, social these days in Stouffville, a little bit volatile, I must say. And I don't know, I have mixed feelings about social media, so I'd like to get your opinion broadly first on social media. Good thing, bad thing?
Well, good morning, Brenda, and good morning, Jason.
Good morning.
The social media in general, I think, is one of the greatest innovations of this century. I think it's made the world a lot smaller. I think people are able to connect with their families, with their loved ones, making new connections that would have been completely impossible. And so it's changed a lot of things on a cultural level, on a technical level, etc. Obviously, it can get very interesting because where information goes, where knowledge goes, you have a difference in opinion. And those differences in opinions illustrate themselves in public. As you can see in the news, you've got a number of opinions that have to do with people's perception of privacy. For example, so this delete Facebook movement is really the expression of the outrage that comes with the individual interpretation of what privacy means to different people. And so from that perspective, you've got a number of people. I mean, you literally can have 10 people with 10 different interpretations of what Facebook means with respect to privacy. So, of course, when it's not a single individual or a single organization articulating their definition of privacy, when you've got 10 different individuals talking about 10 different things, you're going to have an even broader spread of this difference of opinion. How's that for a diplomatic answer?
That was very diplomatic, but it also made a lot of sense, because I think privacy was very simple in the past. My house, my life, my things, my kids, my whatever. And, you know, if you wanted to meet to talk about somebody, you all met down at the park. Now you don't even have to leave your house and you can talk about whoever you want. And people seem to, because there isn't a face in front of them, that they can just do things that they normally wouldn't have done, and they don't understand privacy or non-privacy in a social media setting.
Because it's changed. Because the definition of privacy has changed. So people like to have one definition and stick with it for life. So
for anything.
So back in the 80s, we had computers that were not connected to other computers. It was very simple to look at a computer and say, you know what, I'm just going to put my data in this machine and expect it to not be accessible by anyone else unless someone comes in through the window and steals my machine. Now, our computers are an extension of ourselves, and the far-reaching expanse of all these social media connections are an extension of ourselves. So we are essentially extending ourselves across any number of groups that we participate in on social media. We feel like we are present in those groups. Every time we see something crawl across our news feed, that is us keeping our finger on the pulse of what's going on in each of those areas or groups or interests or hashtags or whatever it might be that we've chosen to take part in. So people choose to take part in different discussions, and of course they do that not necessarily because they want to agree with other people, but sometimes because they want to disagree and they want to have hopefully polite discourse. The issue around confrontational exchanges has a lot to do with netiquette. So something that I call netiquette, it's been around for decades, and that netiquette is something that when interconnected computers were in their infancy, when the internet was in its infancy, it was already at the top of the minds of people who were communicating online. And it's simply manners. And those manners sometimes are not followed by some of the people who participate in social media exchanges.
It's also difficult in the world of manners, as it used to be. If you messed up and you said something that you shouldn't have said, you could correct yourself and say, oh, you know what? I'm really sorry. I wasn't even paying attention. I was having a rotten day. I'm really sorry. It's almost impossible to do that in a social media setting. You can say that, but the post is still there. Even if you've taken it down, other people have saved it, read it, passed it on, made a huge thing out of it that goes global. It's not even in your own community. It reaches other communities,
instantly.
Other countries, other parts of the world. And it's really hard to backtrack and say, you know what, maybe I shouldn't have said that.
That's right. And backpedaling doesn't look that great either.
No.
But the fact is that you should. So if in fact you've said something wrong, absolutely it makes sense to go back online and say, hey, you know what, there is a human being behind this avatar that is talking to you, and maybe I misspoke. That certainly would go a long way towards diffusing a lot of confrontations that we see online today.
That's true. Although it's sort of, I know people who have been, how should we say, caught in a bit of a web by saying something they shouldn't have said, instantly trying to retract it. It doesn't get retracted, and there can be serious repercussions. People have lost their jobs over things that they shouldn't have said and shouldn't have posted. You know, there's really serious consequences to some of the stuff like right now. It's not just your personal page anymore. It's not just your opinion, although it is.
That's
in
right.
A lot of ways, it isn't.
That's right. That's a good point about the professional versus the personal. So in professional settings, it's difficult to retract things that are hurtful or unprofessional or what have you. In professional contexts, there's a very interesting and complex psychological issue, which has to do with balance or imbalance of authority. And that imbalance of authority we see in something that we term cyberbullying. So those cyberbullying concepts, I participate in educating schools about it. For example, teachers need to be very educated about what cyberbullying looks like and how to diffuse those types of situations. So some people go online specifically to see weakness in others, and if they see someone retracting a statement, they might see it as weakness, and they can pounce on that even more ferociously. So it does have to do with manners, but it also has to do with human nature and psychology, and a lot of these things that point to the fact that the internet and the web and social media are brand new. We never evolved to have any clue about any of this stuff. We're all struggling with our sudden penetration into all of these groups that otherwise would be unreachable without the web.
We're going to take a little break and pay some bills here. And when we come back, we'll continue our discussion with Claudiu. We're going to be talking more about social media and a little bit about privacy, because privacy is a big issue these days. And I think Facebook seems to have breached its perceived measures of privacy, whether they were real or not. Anyway, we'll be right back. You're listening to Freshwaves. We'll be back right after this quick message.
Hi folks, Kim Mitchell here. You know, however you choose to get around, your ATV, your snowmobile, your boat, car, if you have a motorcycle, all these things take 100% of your attention and skill to operate safely. Alcohol impairs that, and bad things can happen. So, be smart, okay? You know what I'm going to say next.
This message brought to you from the Safe and Sober Awareness Committee.
We're back on Freshwaves. We're talking with Claudiu Popa about internet, social media, and privacy and security and all of that kind of stuff. So just before the break, we were promising that we would talk a little bit about privacy. There's this warped perception that when you have only your friends and your little network created on Facebook or Instagram or any of the other social media platforms, that you are entitled to privacy. I've heard it said before, thinking that Facebook is private is ludicrous, and it's akin to standing naked in the mall. And if you're okay with standing naked in the mall and having everybody see everything there is to see about you, then participate in Facebook.
I think it was Farrah Fawcett that stood naked in a mall.
Oh, was it?
Once.
Years ago?
Speaking of that. And
you're dating yourself.
And that's still somewhere on the internet, which says something about privacy.
Right.
I'm sure Google Images will pop something up. But now our listeners are frantically typing that in. But I think, so one of the key points I want to make is that privacy is a human right. So privacy has been defined as our right to keep the outside world in their place and for us to have our own control over our personal bodily privacy. That's actually a term. And in this case, information privacy. So we do have a right to privacy. Social media has a legal requirement to respect our privacy. However, what you see online when you click on privacy links on Facebook is not about privacy. You will notice this because our privacy is spelled in lowercase letters. On Facebook, you will find that privacy is capitalized. And there's a reason for that. So legally speaking, they are providing their own definition of privacy. So watch for that. And understand the fact that what they mean by privacy is simply giving you additional control over the information that you implicitly or explicitly choose to share with them. So that consent that you're giving to Facebook simply means you're okay with their business model, which you have to understand. They have costs. They have to pay for servers and connectivity and development, software development, etc. But they have to trade something, and that something is eyeballs. So advertising is their business model, and you are the product. So because you're the product, you also need to stick around for them to have any value at all. In order for you to stick around and get benefit from this and continue connecting with your family, you need to familiarize yourself with the privacy policy, and that privacy policy will outline what their understanding is of what it is that they're taking from you or accepting from you in exchange for this account. And the company came out this morning with some changes to this privacy policy and their privacy settings. So they were very clear in that This is not a change in their privacy policy or terms of service, but this is a clarification made to improve transparency, quote unquote. And so what they've done is they've introduced some shortcuts. And those shortcuts allow you to, yes?
Sorry, it was just that in the past, they've always been there, but it's really hard to get to those privacy settings.
That's right.
Isn't
It seems like it's more
varied.
of a circuitous route each time you go to the privacy settings area. And so they make it a little bit more unintuitive, I find. If they really wanted to make it intuitive, it would be as easy to use as Facebook itself.
Yes.
But no, it's like it's a different site. So really, they've introduced a couple of shortcuts that allow you to get to where they think you might want to go. And there's also a section that has been clarified. It was there before, but it's been clarified where you can request your own data and download it. And that is supposed to make people feel like they're in control because they get to see what Facebook has on them or about them. And their stock price responded. It went up 1.5% this morning as a result, which may be correlation or causation. We don't know. But it's clear that people are pushing back against its business model because of the way it has been treating individuals and potentially unethically taking advantage of the legalese in its privacy policy and terms of service.
Okay. So when people get a Facebook account, when they first go on to Facebook and it says, by pressing continue, you are agreeing to Facebook's privacy laws and whatever, and people just go continue without looking, without reading. It would be interesting to take a poll and see how many people have actually read the privacy or business policies of Facebook.
That's right. So it can take you 1 minute to set up an account, or it can take you 10 minutes to set up an account on
or
Facebook.
Or 3 days if you're going to read that whole agreement. It's pretty long.
It is. So one of the tips that I like to share, aside from the fact that you need to pay attention to the capitalization of the word privacy, is to skim that privacy policy and to get right down to the bottom and see if there's a link. And this goes for every site, not just social media, any website. Skim it right down to the bottom where you have a contact link. And that contact link is either there or isn't. If it's there, then that's good because you can email that party. In Canada, they have about 30 days, or they have exactly 30 days to respond as per Canadian privacy law. And you can ask them whatever you want. In other words, you don't necessarily have to be puzzled over the privacy policy. You can simply articulate a set of questions and send them to that privacy contact who is required to answer them. Now, of course, in a situation where you're just setting up an account and you want to use Facebook, that may not work out so well because you don't have time to wait for these people to respond. But if it's not an urgent situation, and it shouldn't be because, jumping on yet another social media platform is not really a life or death matter. We never evolved to use social media, so we likely won't die without it. Teenagers might, though. But
or they might think they will.
That's right. They'll have severe withdrawal symptoms. But it gives you that sense of control over it. And that sense of control in Canada is not just a sense, it's actually the law. So you do have control over your data here in Canada. So we're lucky to have a mature privacy or a set of privacy legislation in effect that keeps improving.
Well, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
I bet a lot of people don't know that.
The Privacy Commissioner's offices they exist at the federal level, at the provincial level, and the municipal levels, and they're all there to serve people. So there's really no reason not to have conversations with them anytime you have any concerns about privacy.
That's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have to get that information up on our Facebook page, Jason. Okay, so people can sign or not. I mean, sometimes it's easy when you're going to play solitaire and you download the free game that tells you there's going to be advertising. But it also tells you that this application wants access to all of your passwords, your contact list, this, that, and the other. Do you agree? Well, I have to look at that and say, probably not, and I don't need solitaire that badly. But it would be nice to have the option of saying, well, you can have this, but you can't have that. And I'm not really sure about this one. And still get the game.
I think a lot of people need to reframe that. And the reason I say this is because within the social media setting, when you want to play Farmville, for example, that game will need to run on the Facebook application platform, which needs to be turned on. You should not turn on that application platform. Once you turn on the application platform, it shares information with the application providers. And it doesn't just share your information, it shares your friends' information. So your entire group is shared through you. Therefore, you have that level of accountability towards your network of friends. So in reframing, you should think about what is getting shared that doesn't have to do with you. Because a lot of people say, well, I have nothing to hide. But your friends have trusted you by clicking like or clicking connect or clicking or connecting with you on Facebook. And the reason they don't share things publicly and they only share them within their network of friends is because they have that one-to-one or otherwise some kind of a connection with you. That doesn't mean they are giving you the right to share that information with application vendors. And that's how this Cambridge Analytica situation came about with Facebook, where we've seen the number 250,000 accounts being shared with this app that Cambridge Analytica had created by a Canadian company, incidentally. And somehow we got to 50 million accounts. So people saw that as a disconnect. Wait a minute. First you say 250, then you say 50 million. Well, guess what? People have humongous networks. And because they were okay to share this information, all their friends' data that was shareable ended up going along with it. So that's how that massive scale was reached, and that's why we are where we are today with this situation that is now being investigated.
Wow. You can see the snowballing effect. Mm-hmm. Especially because I guess we're going to have to take a break now, but when we come back, do you think a lot of people just don't know?
Well, I think a lot of people have not had an opportunity to maybe take the time and not necessarily read the privacy policies. Anyone has time for that, but they haven't really taken the time to understand what
that means.
What does it mean to run an app on your computer? An app simply means that your computer is temporarily under the control of somebody else's code, and that goes for your smartphone as well.
All right, so much to learn this morning. Do stay tuned. We'll be back with Claudiu Popa on Fresh Waves right after this.